So just a heads up, AEM is a web content management system used to build the websites. So people who have missed, I have completed one session. Okay, so I would be sharing that session with you. You can have a look at that. Today we are going to get started with the architecture of AEM. Okay, and so in yesterday's session, which you guys missed out, we have started. I showed you how to start the instance, how to deploy the instance. Okay, so today we are going to look at a few more things here. Now, if you look at this architecture of AEM. So now our instance is up and running, AEM instance is up and running, and if you remember yesterday's recap, whenever you want to start an AEM instance, all you need to do is just say HTTP server name colon port number. Okay, server name colon port number. Which means because my instance, and how does AEM come distributed? If you remember from yesterday's session, AEM comes distributed because we have a jar plus a license. The moment I double click, I need to have a JDK running. The moment I double click this jar, the instance gets started. Okay. Now once the instance gets started, because I'm working on the local host, okay, it will be localhost colon. So when I rename the jar, this is running as an author instance on 4502 port. Okay. So that's the reason I will be giving the port number as 4502 here. Now the moment I do this, right, my instance starts up. So let's just get into that page here, and HTTP localhost. Mind you, for you guys to start the AEM on your machines, you would have to get this jar and the license file. Now when I say localhost 4502, this takes me to the login page where I enter admin as the credentials. Okay. And once I sign in, okay, now this view is called as the index page. Okay. Now if you look at the URL of the index page, okay, this is called as the index page. Now the index page gives you all the options available in your AEM, right? Websites. This is the option used to create the websites, create the pages. This is used to create the digital assets. Slowly we are going to get familiar with all this. So my point here is, right, there are two kinds of views in AEM. Two kinds of views in AEM. So the first one is called as the classic UI. Okay. Now if you remember the history of AEM, it was started way back in 2002 and it was called DayCQ 3.5. Then Adobe acquired it in 2011 and they started calling it as Adobe Experience Manager. So CQ, Adobe Experience Manager, AEM, WCMS, everything is one and the same. So this classic UI, right, has been the legacy UI, right, which has been used since the beginning. It has been used since the beginning of the product. Since the beginning of the product. Okay. Now, when you look at this green color theme here, right, this is the AEM classic UI. So in this classic UI, right, this is a non-responsive framework, which means,
Excuse me, hello?
yeah,
Yeah, this is Indubhushan here. This is my first class joining over here.
okay,
Uh, I actually discussed with the people. Mani tried to share me the last class video recording, but he has
okay,
not shared.
here.
So I'm completely new in AEM. So could you please little bit show me up because I think I'm in the middle. I don't know what is going on in this.
Yeah, this is just the
So
second session, okay, and after this session you will get the demo. However, this is just a tool used to build websites, okay, we have not even started with anything. Okay, so you will understand today's session, and post this session I will be sharing the last class with you, okay.
Okay, and can you explain me how you are starting and all this about
Yeah, so
the
okay, the only thing here is, okay, to start the AEM instance, I'm going to share this jar file with you. Okay, this entire AEM comes as a jar and a license file. I'm going to share this jar file with you. You need to rename this jar file as CQ hyphen. So your AEM, okay, let me explain this one. AEM can run on AEM can run in two ways, okay? One is the author. Okay, so what is this author and what is this publish is the question, right? So for that you may need to know a little bit of fundamentals. So author is a mode in which your website authors log in to create the website. Okay, the website authors log in to create the website, which means now why would I use a content management system? So that a website author can log in and create different components in my site. So for example, from here if I want to navigate there, all I need to do is just click on websites. So the job of an author is to create the pages. So all that he has to do here is go here and say new page. Okay. Now let's say this Geometrix is a fictitious website which Adobe have already built. It is not something that I built. The moment you start the server, you get this for reference. Now when you say new page, the moment you say a new page, whatever shows up here, these are all called as templates. Okay. So the job of a website author is to create pages, okay, using templates. So without a we're going to see in detail what a template is and all of that. Okay? At a high level, know what exactly is happening. So the job of an author is to create pages using the templates. Now once he creates, let's say he creates Geometrix page, and I'll call this as testing. Okay? I created a page using a template. I choose this option. Now whatever you see here, the page is rendered. So what is the job of an author? The job of an author is to create the content for my website. If it was traditional Java development, somebody has to go to the backend like the JSP and then change the content. But whereas here, these are all components that can be dragged and dropped. If you look at this, let's say I want to have, this is called as the placeholder where I can drag and drop the components. Now if I want to drop a component, let's say I want to add a text here, and just below this text I want to add an image. So if you see here, whatever I added here is called as the components. Okay. So the author creates the content for my website using the reusable components. Now when I say reusable components, so whatever I dragged here is a text component. Just below this component I can drop another component. So components, right, components are reusable and are different units of which a page is comprised of which a page is comprised. So when I talk about a website is a collection of pages, and every page is made up of various components. So as a developer creates these reusable components. So this is what we are going to learn in the training. How to create the components is what you are going to understand. But at a high level, if I want to add one image here, I can drag and drop one image. Okay. Now if you look at this, right, if it was Java development, I would have to go to this backend, this JSP, and modify everything. But with here, everything is drag and drop. If I want to add one image here, add this image. If you feel this image is not good, add another image. Right? So this way, everything happens on the fly. Everything happens dynamically here. Now, if I want to change the text, I'll say, hey. So this is called as a dialog, and it allows non-technical users. Right? As an author, I don't know anything about Java. I don't know anything. but it allows non-technical users to manage the content of my site. So I'll say, hey, welcome to train. And the moment I say, okay, if you see this, right, it has allowed the non-technical users to update the content of my website and add this. Okay, this is the job of an author. Now your AEM, this same view, let's assume I take some website is already live on production. Okay. Now let's say I open citrix.com, which is a large AEM site in production. So this citrix.com that you see here, okay. Now this, of course, this shouldn't be editable, right? None of this, so if I want to change it, this should not be editable, which means this has to run on a read-only mode. So this read-only mode is called as publish instance. So AEM can run in two ways or two modes. One is the author instance and one is the publish instance. So the publish instance, right, is a read-only mode and nothing is editable on publish. Okay. This is the next difference. It's read-only and nothing is editable. So the way whether it starts as author or whether it starts as publish, everything happens because of this naming convention here. The naming convention is author instances, okay, for author, for a AEM jar, right, whatever I hand over, does the publish instance run on a separate jar? No, the same jar can be started as either author or publish. So all I need to do is for author instance, name it as the naming convention for AEM jar. Let me show you this. Adobe recommendation to name the AEM jar, naming convention for AEM jar is to say CQ hyphen, okay, run mode hyphen port number, okay, followed by P followed by port number. Now followed by port number dot jar. Now depending on whatever kind of instance you want to start, we are going to name it. So let's say the next convention here is author instances run on even number ports. This is the convention. And publish instances run on odd number ports.
Yeah, in the version here, that is any or any even 4 digit?
Yes, that is a 4-digit. P. So if you look at the naming convention here, CQ hyphen run mode. Run mode is either author or publish. So I want to run this as author. And port number is 4502. So you can run it on any port which is available, which is not used. You can use any unused port. Okay. Now, once you do this, just go ahead and double click the jar and it's going to get started. Okay. The only thing that you missed yesterday is how to run. The only thing how to run start this. There are 3 ways to start the server. That is a 1-hour video that you missed, which once you look at it, you'll understand that. Okay, that's what you have missed out. And a demo session, which was the initial session on the fundamentals of CMS. Okay. Anyway, I will be sharing that post the session for whoever has missed receiving those videos.
Okay. There, how to check that port and everything is there, right?
Everything is there in that.
Okay. Can you please share here after the session?
Now, I assume that my instance has started. Okay, so once my instance has started, now the next thing that we need to understand is there are 2 kinds of use. This is what I am saying. Okay, once the instance started, all you need to do is fire this URL localhost 4502. So it takes you to the welcome page. So on this index page, okay, I told you there are 2 kinds of views. One is the classic UI. So if you look at the classic UI, let's say welcome.html. Okay. Now all you need to do to go back to this screen is just remember one single URL called welcome.html. It will automatically redirect you to this URL. All you need to do is just say welcome .html. This is the index page. So I was talking about this. So this has a green color background for the header. So everything is in dark green here. The idea here is this has been a legacy view, but there is a scroll bar here. This is a horizontal scroll bar. Now let's assume you're using the mobile device for authoring. Right? If you scroll to the right, this horizontal scroll bar is a little messy when it comes to the mobile devices. Rather, I want this to automatically adjust itself to any mobile device, to any device with different widths and heights. Instead of having this scroll bar, I want a responsive framework where this thing adjusts. I don't want this horizontal scroll bar. So for that, Adobe have introduced a new UI. Okay? This is called as Touch UI. Let's call this as Touch UI. So what is this Touch UI? So this Touch UI is a responsive framework. Okay. For authoring, okay, remember this, I'm not talking about the end user facing website. I'm only talking about the authoring instance at the moment. Okay. Touch UI is a responsive framework for authoring. Where will it be useful? This is useful if I want my mobile users, if I want mobile users to create the pages and components, to create the pages and modify the content, okay? That's fine. So how do I access this Touch UI? Now I understood that to access the classic UI, the URL to access the classic UI was http localhost 4502/welcome.html. Okay. So in the classic UI, you would see a green color background, and horizontal scroll bars, okay, to view the whole page. This is the idea, to view the whole page. Whereas in Touch UI, what is the URL that we need to remember? For Touch UI, you would say http localhost 4502. Okay. Instead of welcome.html, so I would use the projects.html. Okay. So when I say projects.html, it takes me to the new UI. So this UI, Touch UI, right? Touch UI has been introduced starting from version 5.6.1. Okay, starting from 5.6.1. So with version 6.1, 6.2, right? 6.1, it supports 6.1 or 6.2 supports both Touch UI as well as classic UI. Now, how to view this Touch UI? How do I identify whether it is Touch UI or classic UI? All that you need to do is, now the same page, right? The same index page, whatever you see with this green background, I can view it on Touch UI. All I need to do is copy this URL. So instead of welcome.html, add projects.html here. Now when you add this project, if you see this, there is a dark black color background, and if you see this area here, let me add a marker there. So this particular piece here that you see is called as the side rail. This particular piece is called side rail, and this entire thing has a black color background, and more importantly, let me talk about this. More importantly, this is a responsive based authoring framework. So if you see this, let's clear everything. Touch UI. So let's talk a little bit of history around why this was introduced. Okay, this is a responsive authoring framework which enables authors to create content using mobile devices without the concept of that messy scroll bar which we saw, without the horizontal scroll bar. If there is no horizontal scroll bar, what exactly happens? Right? The page automatically adjusts itself. So if you look at this, let's assume I have a smaller mobile device. So if you see this, there is no concept of horizontal scroll bar. Depending on the width and height of the browser, right, it is adjusting itself. So this is a more powerful authoring framework. And if I go to the smallest device, right, you see this image, content, everything is adjusting itself. No concept of horizontal. So the entire page layout adjusts itself according to the width and height of the browser. And this is the first advantage here. The second advantage with this one is this look and feel that you see, the look and feel, touch UI is based on based on Coral UI framework. Okay. And this same UI, and if you also remember guys, I told you Adobe Marketing Cloud has 6 solutions. Right? So all the 6 solutions in the Adobe Marketing Cloud uses the same look and feel, and the widgets look similar. So for somebody using Analytics, Adobe Analytics, or somebody using any of the solutions, you would see the same side rail, right? So things become intuitive, okay, because it uses the same way. Otherwise it's difficult to have different dashboards for different solutions. Okay, all the 6 solutions in the Adobe Marketing Cloud uses the same look and feel and widgets, so things become easy. Okay. So on a page, and if this is based on Coral UI framework, then what is this classic UI based on? Okay, the classic UI is based on EXTJS framework. EXTJS is a JavaScript framework where all these dialogues, so for example, if you look at this guys, if I want to edit something, okay, this dialog that shows up, these are all called as widgets. So this is the first widget here, and this is a second widget. This is a drop down widget, selection widget, and this is a second widget. Do I need to write code for these dialogs? No, all these things are inbuilt in your EXTJS framework. Okay. I will show you how to create this dialog, but at a high level I am trying to talk important stuff about classic UI and Dutch UI. So this entire dialogs, so what is a dialog, what is a widget? This entire thing is called as a dialog here. Right. This entire thing is a dialog, and this piece here is the first widget and this is the second widget. How to create this we don't know yet. So the point I am trying to convey is the widgets, dialogs that you use, the widgets, dialogs are all based on EXTJS. We will understand the EXTJS as we move forward. However, on the touch UI, right, the same page, now this whatever I see here is the classic UI. The same page, okay, let's say I copy this URL, any URL, okay. All I need to do, there is another, this is the classic view. Okay, let me add this. If I open up a normal page, okay, this is a normal page. So this CF hash indicates that we are on the classic view. Now the same page, if I want to open it on touch UI, all that I'm going to do is change the CF hash and make this as editor editor.html. And when the page opens up, do you see the black color background here? So this becomes the touch UI. And on touch UI, if I want to edit this image, or if I want to edit this text, okay, this dialog that you see, right, this is a responsive framework. See, this dialog itself adjusts itself based on however I adjust my screen. All of you get the difference here? So the dialog look and feel also changes for the touch UI as well as the, now this black color background is the touch UI. So let me add this point as well. So the same page, okay, this becomes the editor.html. Okay. So the same page can be opened either on touch UI or on classic UI. And the dialog creation, so if you ask me, hey, what is the dialog creation effort? Is it different for touch UI and different for classic UI? Absolutely. Okay. The dialog effort creation, the dialog, who is doing the dialog creation, guys? It is we, the developers are going to create the dialogs. Okay. The dialog creation is separate for classic and touch. Okay. We are going to create it in the future, so you are going to understand both. Okay. At a high level, I want you to understand the two views that are available. Any questions on this, anybody? Great. So let's proceed.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello. One question.
Yeah.
So how can you in touch UI? How we are opening this, showing this dialog? You just opened it, pop up black color.
Correct. All I need to do is click on this. Just click on whichever component. This is the text component. This is the image component, and then just say edit here. This is going to open up the dialog for you. Okay.
Okay.
All you need to, that's going to open up the dialog for you. And here is where we are going to add all the text. Okay. We are going to see this in future, how to work with this, what exactly happens, where to create this. All the at a high level, there is a 10,000 feet view of what AEM is capable of doing. Right?
Alright.
Okay.
And you, one thing you have shown a Coral UI. What is that?
Yeah, Coral UI is a new framework which is introduced by Adobe, and Coral UI is Adobe's own framework to display the dialogues in touch UI. We are going to talk about that in the future.
Okay.
When I start building the dialogues, we are going to understand what this Coral UI is, what the EXTJS is, and all of that. Okay. Okay. So now we understood at a high level that Adobe basically, when I create the pages, let's make this back to CS hash. So author creates the pages, right? So the next question is, where does this content, right? Now each time I restart the page, each time I restart my AEM instance, this same content should show up. Right? Which means I need some kind of persistence. Somewhere in the backend this content has to get stored. Where exactly the content is getting stored, how that content is fetching on this page, all those things we're going to understand. Okay, so we're going to understand the architecture of AEM. Now, if you try to understand, okay, we have three layers in the AEM. Okay. The first thing, let's assume, before even moving to AEM, let's think of a typical Java application. Now let's say I want to build a website. Now, where is the data of my website usually stored in a Java J2W application? I would have one database. Right? Let's assume I want to build a books website. Okay? Where the moment I say Amazon.in, I want to display all the books available in Amazon in a table. Here I will, okay, so basically in the backend I will create a database where I will have rows and columns. This would be by ID, title of the book, and the name of the author, price of the book. So basically what I am trying to say is, when you want to build a Java application, you're going to have the MVC model where first you are going to say amazon.jsp. The moment you access the view, you're going to hit the controller. Let's say I'm invoking a simple servlet. That servlet is going to make a JDBC call to the database. The servlet is going to make a JDBC call to the database, fetch the result sets, and then display it. Right? Everybody agrees with me. This is a typical MVC application in Java J2EE. In AEM, right? How does the data get stored in AEM? The first very important point. How does the data, where is the data getting stored in AEM? So in AEM, for the data storage, we add something called JCR. What is this JCR? Stands for Java Content Repository. First important point, no concept. So you need to unlearn a lot of things. No concept of databases, tables, and rows. In that case, how is the data getting stored? Okay, so what is this? So in AEM, the storage, right? Where is the data getting stored? So instead of this database, we are using something called JCR. So what is this JCR? JCR stands for Java Content Repository. So this Java Content Repository is a hierarchical model for storing the data. What do I mean by hierarchical model is the question. Okay. In Unix, we have something called root, and root has children, right? Root has children. So that way, everything begins with a root. Everything begins with a root. Okay. And root we identify with a slash. This root in turn is going to have child, and a child in turn could have more child nodes. Okay, child 2, at child 3, and so on. Okay, so I am adding this. What do I mean by this? Okay. The data is stored as a hierarchy in the form of nodes and properties. What do I mean by nodes and properties? Okay, first of all, if you look at this, every node, okay, very important, these are very important fundamentals. Every node has associated properties. And what are these properties? Okay. Data is stored in the form of nodes and properties. What is this node? What is this node? We are going to understand that. Stored in the form of nodes and properties. So if you look at what I am trying to say, let's go back here. I want to talk about this URL, don't worry about the URL, understand the fundamental first. So the entire storage of your AEM goes as part of this JCR here. So if you look at this, let's run it again. Now when I expand, now basically if you see, I see that there is some path here. Okay. I see that there is some path, we don't understand what this path is. So let's just copy this path and I'll paste this here. Say enter. The moment I do that, right, what I see here is this becomes my root node. Right? This becomes my root node. I told you everything begins with a root and everything is nodes and properties. A folder is also a node. Anything that you see here, hey, I'll take up all the questions once I explain this one, okay? In database it is stored as rows and columns. In JCR it is stored as nodes and properties. Okay? That is the answer for your question. So now, what is this nodes and property? Everything that you see here, node is the entity of storage here. Node is a unit of storage here. You cannot have anything smaller than a node. And one more important property I added here, every node has its associated properties. And what is this property? A property is a key and a value. A property is a key and a value. What do I mean by that? Okay. Now apps under root, okay. Under the first level I have some 12 nodes here, apps, big, conf, content. Now apps has its own properties. So these are the properties. This is the key, this is the value, and this is the type. Okay. This is the second property. This is the name of the property, key, value. This is the name of the property, value. Name of the property, value. And every property has its own associated data type here, which is fine. The next important point here is, now let's say I copied and entered this value called testing. Interestingly, each time I start my server, the same state of the nodes need to show up, because when I start the server, I want the same content to show up, which means, how is this value getting stored here? Hey, welcome to training should be somewhere in my backend. Now when I go to content geometrics testing, okay, this is the node, this is the child node of this testing node. Okay, now when I expand the child node, forget how this is getting added and everything, but the fundamental here is, when I change some value here, instead of welcome to training, I'll say welcome, today is a warm day, anywhere. When I update some property, warm day today, see, okay, whenever you see something in red color, just save it up, Control S would do. And if I refresh the page now, okay, warm day. So basically my entire website is working because it is fetching the content from the nodes and properties. Okay, my page is fetching the content from various nodes and properties. Okay, if I change the value of the property, I see that my content on the website also changes. Okay. So this is the hierarchical model I am talking about. So content, right, root is the highest level. First child of root is content. Second child here is geometrics. So I expand geometrics. So this way, the third child here, content, geometrics, testing. Okay. So when I go here, content, geometrics, testing. So when I create a page, I see that nodes are automatically getting added in the backend. Creation of pages by the author. Creation of pages by the author would create a new node in my JCR. Node in my JCR. And the content of my pages is also changing because I changed the properties. Is this fundamental very clear with everybody? Any questions on this fundamental? Great, I assume it is good. Now the next question. So what is this JCR, all of those things? We'll understand now. Okay. We understood everything is stored in the form of nodes and properties. Okay. Now again, JCR is a specification. So what do I mean by a specification? Specification is a set of rules. Right? It's like an interface in Java. Okay? It's like an interface in Java. What do I mean by interface in Java? It just has the method signatures. The definitions is not clear yet, but it is like a kind of a governance map. It tells these are all the rules. Now, if this is the specification, who is the implementation? What are all the different implementations available? Which implementation does AEM use? Okay, so there are two implementations that AEM uses. Two implementations that AEM uses. What are those implementations? One is Jackrabbit, Apache is the open source who have gone and implemented the JCR. AEM uses open source Apache Jackrabbit implementation. It's called Jackrabbit Oak. And Adobe's own implementation of JCR. Okay, Adobe's own implementation of JCR is called CRX. Okay. What does this CRX stand for? It stands for Content Repository Extreme. Stands for Content Hub. So AEM uses two implementations. One is Jackrabbit Oak and Adobe's own implementation called CRX. So as developers, right, what is that we are going to do in the future? As developers, we are going to get familiar with the APIs. We are going to get familiar with the JCR APIs, so that you can play around with the nodes and properties programmatically. We are going to programmatically play around with the nodes and properties and all that stuff. Okay. Next, now how do I view this particular URL is the question. Okay. Now, to view the repository, okay, JCR stands for Java Content Repository. To view the repository AEM, you need to remember the URL. HTTP.
Rishi,
Yeah.
so what is the difference between the Apache Jackrabbit and Adobe's own implementation of CRX?
Yeah, I'm going to explain that. So once I talk about the persistence, I'll talk about Oak and JCR. Okay? We want to see that in few minutes.
Okay.
So now, how to view the repository? So CRX slash. Okay. So now look at the CRX slash DE. Okay. So DE stands for Development Environment. CRX stands for Content Repository Extreme. Okay. So now, if you look at, that's the same URL that I use here. Either I can say CRX slash DE. Now when I do that, okay, see this content repository extreme. So with this one, right, this has a lot of utilities. You can do a lot of creation of nodes, creation of components. If I need to create a component, we have a detailed exercise, but at a high level, because of the development environment, it has options to create components, templates, dialogues, bundles, everything is available here. Okay? So this is called as a CRX development environment. Other URL to create this is, one is CRXD, which is a lightweight framework. It's a lightweight. Other URL is HTTP localhost. This is again a little legacy URL, but very effective. CRX slash explorer. There's another URL to view your AEM. So now, that's a CRX explorer. Even here again you can, this is the repository storage and you can view the entire backend here. Okay. So all you need to do is go to the content explorer. Right. Here also you can view, but here you can see additional information about the node, okay, which we are going to talk about slowly. Okay. So two ways to access the repository. Now what is this CRX? What is the difference? Somebody asked me a good question. Now what is the difference? Very good question. So if you look at the difference here, Adobe's implementation of CRX is used to browse the repository, and Jackrabbit Oak is used for persistence. Okay, is used for persistence of the nodes. Okay, so everything it uses OAK. The only thing that is used with CRX is just to browse the repository, the nodes and properties. Okay, which means now you may ask me a question. Okay, I told yesterday when we start the server, when I just double click the server, it is automatically generating the CRX quick start. Correct? It was automatically generating the CRX quick start. And when you open the CRX quick start, you see something called repository. Now, what is this repository? Okay, this is where whatever you see here on this front end, right, basically this is responsible for fetching this backend. Okay, the physical storage. Whenever you create a new node, this is going to get modified here. Okay, so if you look at this, let me add this very important point. The data is stored on the physical storage. When I say physical storage, I am talking about the CRX quick start folder. Data is stored on the physical CRX quick start folder, okay, as tar files. What do I mean by tar files? Tar stands for tape archive. Okay, it's a Unix based, it's a Unix compressed format. Do I, as a developer, do I need to do anything? No. AEM, the JCR, the Jackrabbit OAK API takes care of persisting the data as tar files. Okay. So now, whatever is, so you may ask me another question. Hey, if I uncompress this tar file, will I be able to see the data? No, this is not in a human readable format. Very important. Tar files are not in human readable format. We are going to talk more about this tar file. So whatever is stored in the tar file. So let's say if I go and change, if you remember I created a new page. So that got added as part of some tar file at 8:23, 1 minute back. This is yesterday, this is day before yesterday. So if you ask me, if I delete this segment store, will the same data show, will the same state of the repository be restored? Absolutely no. So that is the reason it is always recommended to take backup of this segment, okay, backup of these tar files under the repository. Go to the segment store and you need to keep taking backup of these tar files. Okay. We are going to understand more about this in some time. So,
hello, 1 second, I'm sorry. So this tar file is getting created that we are creating a repository or the nodes.
correct.
So these are those that are storing over here in segment.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Whatever I create as a node here is getting added as part of my tar files. Who is doing that? My OAK is already doing that.
And with the properties.
Along with the absolutely, along with this entire state, whatever you see, this entire state is getting persisted into my task.
Okay, okay.
And it is all automatically happening. No need to take care of this one. The tool has already been built to persist. Okay. Now, once I understand this, there are a lot of things that we are going to learn here. Okay. So, the tar files are not in human readable format. So, this is the difference between OAK and JCR. Okay. Further, there are some advantages of OAK which you are going to look at it in the future classes. Next important point is, that's fine, right? Now the data is stored in the form of JCR, this is absolutely fine. But how does this data which is getting stored here, how is it that this data is getting rendered to my page is the question. So we use something called Sling here. Okay, if somebody asks you what is Sling, a lot of confusion here. Let me add that here. What is this Apache Sling? So Apache Sling, okay, is used to access the JCR over the web. Okay. I use one phrase here. It is used, so it's similar to something like the JDBC, where JDBC is like a connector to connect the data. It used to connect the front end and the back end, right? JSP and your back end. So similarly, I would say just give me a minute, 1 minute. Hey, sorry guys, sorry about the interruption. So I would say Apache Sling is used to webify the content. Okay, this is the line that I used to remember. Okay, so basically Sling is a REST-based protocol to access the JCR over the web. Okay, this is how the connectivity is being established. So when I process something, when I change some property value, it is automatically getting reflected because this page is connected to the backend here by using Sling. Okay. Now, by tomorrow or day after, you're going to understand the Sling resolution, how the Sling, when I fire a URL, what exactly happens, what are the steps. This is what you're going to see. Okay. So, if you look at the architecture of JCR, this is called as a technology Sling. Okay. Sling is used to access the JCR. So, now we understood how to access the JCR, what is Sling. Okay. The third thing is Sling resolution will be discussed. It's not just enough if you build a website which shows some content, right? You may also need to write some Java code. You may want to do some integrations with third-party services. You may want to make REST calls. You may want to invoke web services. You may want to have some business logic in Java code. Okay. So now whenever I want to write any Java code in AEM, right? This is not a straightforward thing. We have a separate layer for the Java code called OSGI. Okay, what is this OSGI? So basically this OSGI is the third layer here in the architecture. OSGI stands for Open Service Gateway Initiative. OSGI is an Open Service Gateway Initiative, that's the full form. Now again, with OSGI, it's a modular programming framework. It uses the modular programming approach. Now, what is the advantage with this modular programming approach? We need to understand this. So, if you look at it, right? So, let's say an OSGI is comprised of OSGI framework is comprised of reusable, let's say modules, is comprised of modules or bundles. Okay. What do I mean by a modular bundle? Okay. A module, it's a bundle, is a simple jar. Okay. What do I mean by a jar, guys? Jar is nothing but a collection of compiled classes. It's a collection of classes, interfaces, packages, and so on. Interfaces, packages, and so on. Its compiled source code is a jar. So a jar stands for Java archive, which can have multiple classes put together in one umbrella. In addition to it, it has some additional metadata. Okay, that is fine. But then what is the difference between a normal jar and a bundle? Right? This is what a normal jar is, but you have additional, but most importantly, with OSGI, right, you can start or start every single bundle within your application. You can stop or start every single module within your application. I'll give you a scenario where it comes handy. Okay. Now, okay, this is some theory. In that case, okay, what if OSGI is a specification? Okay, again, OSGI is a specification. If OSGI is the specification, who is giving us which implementation does AEM use? Okay, AEM uses Apache Felix, okay, implementation. So there are different implementations of OSGI, one being Knopfler-Fish, Glassfish, 2-3 implementations are there. AEM uses Apache Felix implementation. Okay. Now when I say AEM is Apache Felix implementation, Felix, there is something called Felix container. Okay. Felix container on top of which all the bundles or modules are deployed, on top of which all the bundles are deployed. Okay. Now with this much of data, so how do I access this Felix? There is a separate URL to access the Felix console. The URL to access the Felix console is localhost 4502/system/console. Okay. This is the URL used to access the Felix console. So let me go to my browser. Fetch that. Localhost 4502/system/console. The moment I do that, I see that there are 452 bundles, and if I click on this ID here, it sorts based on the numbers. So every bundle has an ID associated to it. There is some name here, and I see that there is some package name as well. Because this is Java code, it has some package name. More interestingly, there is something called version here, and there is some status associated to every bundle. Okay. Now the most important point is every bundle here or every module can be started or stopped. So if I want, I can stop this and I can start it whenever I want to. So what do you think is the advantage when you have this? Okay. The advantage is in a typical web application, this is not possible. So let's say I have one team that is working on Hybris implementation, one team which is working on the Salesforce. Now, when somebody does change in the Hybris part, to deploy, I need to restart my entire web server. Right? You know that in a normal web server, whenever you change any Java code, let me add that one, very important. In a typical Java application, web application, any source code change, any Java change, right, requires a web server restart. This is not a great approach, but with AEM, right, because you have separate modules, let's say one team working on e-commerce implementation and one team working on, let's say, Hybris. So when I have different teams working on different modules, so I would have separate bundles for these. So this way, the advantage of having separate modules is debugging becomes easy, and any change requires a restart of that particular bundle, So this is the main advantage. I can just go and restart whichever bundle I want to. So this way I'm not overlapping work between two teams. Debugging, troubleshooting becomes easy. So if I know that, and when you see an error, it will tell you which bundle the error is. So when you have thousands of lines of code, you may not suffer because it is separated into different modules. The next advantage with bundles is very important. You can have multiple versions of the bundle. This is another important feature, which means, let's say I have my team come up with version 1.0. So parallelly, they can test with the 1.2.0, and whenever 2.0 is ready, they can take that to active state. So testing everything becomes easy because it allows you to have multiple versions of the bundle running. This is very important. Okay. Any questions on this, guy? Anybody? Okay, good. So now, very important point. My entire AEM is running because the product itself is built as these bundles. There are some 452 bundles, and these are not the ones that I created. The moment I start the server, there are different aspects in my AEM. All those things have been built. The entire functionality of entire AEM is running because the functionalities have been built into bundles. And all these bundles, remember guys, so let's say when you start the server you have issues, you feel that the server has not started properly, go to the Felix console and ensure that all the bundles are in the active state. Okay? Depending, because the functionality and all these bundles are in the active state. Okay? So if you look at some examples, let's say how is the logging happening in AEM, because I have one logging bundle built here. So similarly, how is replication happening? Replication, we'll talk about all this because I have one bundle for replication. So this way, everything happens because these bundles are in the active state. Very important fundamental. Next.
Yeah.
One more important point.
Over here.
So if somebody asks you, hey, what is the technology stack? In your interviews or anywhere, you may encounter this question. Can you explain me the technology stack of AEM? Or what is the architecture of
This is
AEM?
Javed.
Yeah, somebody had a question?
Yes, can we create bundles? I mean, can we?
Yes,
create
this is
new
exactly
bundles?
what we are going to do in our classes. We are going to create our custom bundles. We are going to add functionality. We are going to deploy the bundle into the container. We are going to write Java. That's exactly what we are going to do.
Okay.
Yeah, one question over here, in the question here. Can I, the content we are having, is it included in this bundle?
The content?
Or the content we are having, is this included in this bundle, or
no,
only the Java code is?
Only the Java code. Content is in the JCR. So only when you have Java code, it is included in the OSJ. The bundle is a jar. But whereas content is nodes and properties, which is a different layer altogether.
Okay. And one another question. If by mistake any one of the bundle is getting deleted because there is a delete mark is there, recycle bin mark.
Exactly.
So how can I recover that one?
Okay, so there are two things here. One is uninstall. If you uninstall, it is going to get uninstalled from this container itself, which means again the same question, right? So whatever I see here, it's somewhere in the backend it has to get persisted. You agree with me? Somewhere in the backend I should see this jar file so that I can go and view the source code. Very important point. So the bundles, where layers of data? These can be your interview question. The next question is, my bundles, where are the bundles stored in the backend? So in the backend, when you start the server, bundles are stored in CRX kickstart, the launchpad. Let's go to the CRX kickstart. So anything that you see on the front end, somewhere it has to be on the back end. I mean the physical storage, and this launchpad is the physical storage. In the launchpad, okay, let's say launchpad. I need to go to the Felix here. Do you see all the bundles are stored here? Now let's say I want to view the source code of bundle 3. Okay? Every bundle has 3. So all I need to do is go to the 3, go to inside this one, and this is a jar file. So when I have jar file, how to decompile, how to view the source code from a jar file? Jar is a compiled class. So I need to do the reverse of compilation, which is decompilation. So I can use some decompiler tool and get the source code. Okay. So even in case you uninstall from that location, you could see that persisted somewhere here. Okay. And next time when you start the server, so that typically when you delete something, right, you would have a GitHub in your enterprise where you would have checked all the source code. So you can regenerate the bundles again. So typically you need to regenerate and deploy it again. I am going to talk about those things in the future. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I actually didn't get this one. So if I'm deleting, so how can I get back this?
To get it back, you need to redeploy the bundle from the source code. There is a Maven plugin to generate the bundles for you. Or in the CRX, here there is an option to generate the jar file, which will automatically get deployed. I'll talk about this. You may not understand at this point. All you need to do is here, go to this. Let me show you. Let's go to metrics theory. There is an option to create a bundle, right? There is an option to build a bundle. Let me show you that. Go to the tools. And here there is an option, go to the tools, and there is a build bundle option, right? You see this build bundle, it's disabled because I want to have a valid jar with me. The moment you build a bundle, it will automatically get deployed. I'll talk about that in the video. That's going to get clear to you, okay?
Okay.
Is this
in case if we Rishi, in case if we accidentally delete the bundle, is there a way to roll back the bundle?
You need to build the bundle again. It's just running one task which is going to do that, which we are going to see in the future. I'm going to show you that. There's a Maven, because I need to talk about the Maven plugins, how the bundle gets built. Only then can I explain this answer.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So bundles are stored in CRX start launchpad physically. Now this information you need to know. Tomorrow I'm going to stop at this point. So people who have missed my last session, okay, where I've spoken about the deployments, I've spoken about 3 ways of starting the server. You may have to catch up with a couple of classes and then look into this. So please try to finish the stuff on a day-to-day basis. Don't lag behind with anything because this requires prior practice and prior preparations. I'm going to stop at this point.